food and water move across large distances in plants. However, in plants, the movement of food and water also takes place across short distances. That is, within a cell or from one cell to another. This movement of food and water across short distances takes place either passively by diffusion or by active transport. In diffusion, the molecules move in a random manner, generally moving from a region of high concentration to lower concentration. Diffusion is a passive process. It requires no expenditure of energy. It is a slow process, independent of a living system, and can take place in all states: liquid, solid, and gaseous. Did you know that diffusion is the only means of gaseous transport in plants? Gases such as oxygen and carbon dioxide enter and exit stomata via diffusion. The rate of diffusion is affected by several factors, such as the size of molecules, their solubility in lipids, and the concentration gradient. Of these three factors, the concentration gradient is a must for diffusion to even take place. As for size, the bigger the molecules, the slower the rate of diffusion. And since all membranes are made up of lipids, lipid-soluble substances diffuse faster. For this same reason, hydrophilic or water-soluble substances find it difficult to diffuse through membranes. In addition to their existing concentration gradient, diffusion of such hydrophilic substances has to be facilitated by special proteins called transport proteins. This type of diffusion, facilitated by proteins without any energy expenditure, is referred to as facilitated transport. The rate of transport in facilitated diffusion is maximum when all transport proteins are used or saturated. Facilitated diffusion has an advantage in that it allows cells to select substances for diffusion. It is, however, sensitive to inhibitor molecules that react with side chains of the transport proteins. Proteins are responsible for creating channels in the membrane, which allows molecules to pass through them. Some of these channels are large enough to allow a variety of molecules to cross over. Some of these channels are always open, while others are controlled. Some transport proteins, called porins, form pores in the outer membranes of cell organelles, such as plastids or mitochondria, to allow molecules of the size of small proteins to pass through. When a molecule binds itself to a porin, it rotates to release the molecules inside the cell. The water channels are made up of 8 different kinds of aquaporins. Some transport proteins allow diffusion if 2 different types of molecules are required to be transported. Based on direction, transport of molecules can be differentiated into 3 types: symport, antiport, and uniport. Both molecules cross the membrane in the same direction in a symport, while they move in opposite directions in an antiport. In uniport, as the name suggests, a single molecule diffuses across a membrane independent of other molecules. Unlike diffusion, active transport requires energy to move molecules against the concentration gradient. It is carried out by membrane proteins that use energy. These proteins, called pumps, can also transport substances from low concentration to high concentration, which is akin to uphill transport. Just like facilitated diffusion, the active transport rate is maximum when all protein transporters are being used or saturated. Also, these proteins are specific to the type of substances they carry across. They are sensitive to inhibitors that react with their protein side chains. Of all the means of transport discussed, both diffusion and facilitated diffusion always take place along a concentration gradient and without the expenditure of any energy, whereas only active transport uses energy.